So, the Halo show was canceled after just 2 seasons, and I think this is a good move. Unfortunately, the show was just not good enough. There was a couple of cool things sprinkled in throughout the 2 seasons, but ultimately the show failed for a variety of reasons. Controversial characters and plot points, then you had a bunch of plot holes and pointless side stories and characters. There were important characters from the franchise that were just flat out left from the show. And then you have Master Chief not being portrayed properly, which was probably the biggest flaw of this show. And the love and sexual tension scenes were just not needed. Ultimately, the creators failed to capture the true essence, the true appeal of the Halo universe. The show may not be dead, however, as the companies behind the show, Amblin, Xbox, and 343 Industries, are looking to give the show a new home. Does that mean a new home for Season 3 or a reboot? Who knows? But at the time of me recording this video, my stance is that they need to hit the reset button. I'd love to see a proper Halo show or movie, but it has to be done differently. It has to be done better than this. So today, I want to talk about why the Halo show failed and how it can be done differently in the future. As a longtime gamer and fan of Halo, I was pretty frustrated with this show. Actually, my emotions vary depending on the day, because when I was watching the show, I'd get mad at the way Master Chief was portrayed, and then later I would cringe when I'd see scenes that forced that awkward sexual tension and love between characters that, again, wasn't needed in a show like this. But now when I look back at the show's run, I can't help but laugh, because all they needed to do was follow the source material and they would have been golden. Yes, I encourage and support the addition of new stories and characters, but you have to keep the story on the rails of what the IP actually is about. Changing themes, story elements, and characters is not a good idea at all. People don't like video game adaptations because they don't work out all the time, but we just had 2 good examples recently with The Last of Us and Fallout. It's not that video games can't become good shows, it's the fact that writers want to make their own story and make their own version of whatever game they are adapting. I really don't know why it's so hard to respect the lore and legacy of a successful franchise like Halo. Now, after the cancellation, both Paramount and 343 Industries released statements talking about how proud they were of the show, and they also called the show ambitious. I don't know about that. Obviously, they are going to give a positive PR response, but we all know that this show flopped hard, and let's dive into the reasons why. So first off, the creators of the show paid little to no attention to the games. They even admitted it during Season 1 that they didn't play the games. Like I said earlier, you don't need to retell the entire story of the games mission by mission or spend hours playing the games, but there needs to be some legit research done. Why wasn't there? Was it laziness? Was it stubbornness? Or was it arrogance because they wanted to make their own thing? The show should have focused on characters like the Master Chief, Cortana, Dr. Halsey, Sergeant Johnson, the Arbiter, the Prophets, and maybe some other interesting characters from the Covenant and or Flood factions. The Master Chief's quiet demeanor, I get it might pose a challenge for writers to add emotion and flair to him, but again, if they were looking at the games, then they could have found a few examples on how to do that. Look at the end of Halo 4 with Chief and Cortana, or look at how the relationship grows and develops between Chief and the pilot from Halo Infinite. Just 2 examples to look at. You want to inject humor and energy into the story? Well, you could do that with other characters, and that's where Johnson and Buck come in. Characters like Quan, Soren, and McKee, they weren't needed. McKee was controversial for multiple reasons. I kinda like Soren, but the story with his family and then Quan's side story, they just weren't needed and they took up way too much screen time and just wasted time. I'm not interested in personal family affairs that have nothing to do with the big picture. And then they tried in Season 2 to make Quan some important character in this universe, and it's just silly to do that when there's already a ton of pre-established lore to explore. The main focus of the plot should of course been about the war between humanity and the Covenant, but then there's plenty of other things to add in as well, like the creation of Cortana and the other Spartans, the Spartan program as a whole. Spartans are badass super soldiers. They should have been the main focus in this show, and they should have been portrayed much better. More on that in a moment. There could have also been some political intrigue as well added to the story, and they tried to do that with Oni and some of the other authoritative figures within the UNSC, but it didn't work out well. Generals arguing about battle plans and the use of Spartans, and then government officials debating the creation of Cortana and using her, that all could add more substance with side stories and also other characters. Now let's focus on Master Chief and the Spartans here for a moment. They are perhaps the most intriguing thing about this whole franchise. They are what makes this more than your typical humans versus aliens in space story. The way they portrayed Chief and his fellow Spartans in this show is an absolute travesty. Every single one of them is portrayed as weak and emotional. Like, they are supposed to be better than Marines, and yet they appear to be cannon fodder like the rest of them. I was originally super excited to see Chief lead a squad of Spartans, and then there were some other squads brought in, and then we saw some of them in training. But then what did we get? Half the time they were weak, getting their asses kicked, and then we're second guessing whether or not they wanted to be a Spartan anymore. Then there's Master Cheeks himself. We never see his face in the games, and what happens in literally the first episode of the show? He takes his mask off. But that isn't all of what we see at Chief. We practically see him naked on multiple occasions, because he is having sex, laying on a table half dead from all his wounds, or living out his life as a normal civilian on Reach for some reason. And seriously, his universal nickname for this show is Master Cheeks, since leaving him exposed both physically and mentally was the main priority for the writers.
What the hell am I looking at?
Now I will say this, the combat scenes were pretty good for the most part. We saw a variety of Covenant enemies and some bigger battles. At least in the first season, there were multiple big battles and then some smaller ones too. And then season 2, besides the Battle of Reach, all of a sudden, there wasn't many big fight scenes. Not sure why. But what I did appreciate was seeing the fighting through Chief's eyes. And that seemed to be the one thing from the game that the writers drew inspiration from. That first-person perspective with the HUD from the games was incorporated into the show, and I thought that was awesome, and I believe some of the sound effects were also from the games as well. And Season 2, I will say, was better than Season 1. I did like the storylines for the most part in Season 2, and the best episode of the entire series was the Battle for Reach. It was intense, emotional, and I literally sat there quietly as the credits rolled at the end of the episode as I was trying to process everything that happened. It was really well done. If only the show kept that same energy throughout every single episode. And honestly, I hope we see another Halo project in the future, be it a new show or even a movie. They need to scrap what they have now and start from scratch. Halo, without a doubt, is a video game franchise that can be successful on television. Halo has a strong fan base, so the viewership is going to be there as long as you respect the IP. You know, Halo has existed for like 2 decades via video games and novels, so there's plenty of lore to dive into. They should be able to create a compelling narrative that explores the extensive background and the many intricate details of this universe. And once again, there have been some recent examples of successful video game adaptations like The Last of Us and Fallout, and those shows remain true to the source material for the most part. They were solid shows even with some tweaks and additions. And also, starting from scratch would allow new and fresh energy and creativity to enter the space. This can easily happen if they hire people that have knowledge and passion for Halo. I will fight and die on the hill of nostalgia. There is nothing wrong with it. Gamers will absolutely love to see Master Chief kicking Covenant ass. Gamers want to hear the killer soundtrack through the show as well. And you know, I think Halo offers enough for even new audiences to get into. So yeah, I want to see Halo make a comeback with people that can deliver a faithful, high-quality adaptation for a franchise that deserves it. In all honesty, I think they tried way too hard to make this show something that it never should have been. There doesn't need to be love and sexual tension in a show like this. They didn't need to bend lore and make side characters almost more important than the main ones and change main characters like the Master Chief. Those that work in Hollywood today need to remember that not every project needs to have every element of storytelling in a specific show. Halo should have been simple. It should have been a sci-fi action thriller. It is possible to keep this show simple, stick with the source material, and be a little creative with adding new elements that enhance the source material, not destroy it. I'm shocked that 343 and Xbox didn't do a better job at overseeing this project. Well, actually, I shouldn't be, because 343 has handled Halo about as well as Disney has handled Star Wars. Well, hey, thanks for checking out the video. Tell me your thoughts on the show and if you would like to see Halo get another shot on TV or maybe even a movie at some point. If you are new here, then feel free to go check out the rest of the channel. And a big shout out to all the subscribers out there. I appreciate you guys. You can also find my content on podcasting platforms. Just Google Analyze This Podcast. You could also find me on X and TikTok. X at Analyze This_YT. TikTok at Analyze This 54_YT. Thanks again and take care.